program abruptly stopped sharing critical weather data. Only after an urgent request from NOAA and NASA did DoD extend access to the data, but only till the end of this month. Satellite data is critical for our weather forecasts, and maintaining NOAA's core satellite programs and continuing to advance such capabilities remains a public good. The severe weather events we've witnessed this month from Texas, New Mexico, North Carolina, New York City underscore the importance of supporting the National Weather Service. We support them by making sure that all the weather forecasting offices and prediction centers across the nation are fully staffed with access to all of the tools and training required to be successful in their jobs. And just as important, we also support the National Weather Service by continuing to improve the lead time and accuracy of forecast modeling and communication services. That's done through research. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. Let me now introduce our witnesses. Our first witness today is Mr. Thomas Cavett. He's Vice President of Government Affairs and Strategy at Tomorrow.io, a leading American weather technology company. Mr. Cavett leads government strategy and business development across North America, where he works closely with federal agencies including NOAA, NASA, and the Department of Defense to advance innovative weather capabilities and strengthen weather resilience. Our next witness is Dr. John Nielsen-Gammon. He is currently a registered professor of atmospheric sciences and also serves as a Texas State climatologist and director of the Southern Regional Climate Center. He graduated from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a PhD in 1990. He does research on various types of extreme weather, from droughts to floods, as well as air pollution and computer modeling. Our third witness is Dr. Waleed Abdalati, as director of the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences at the University of Colorado Boulder, where he is also a professor in the geography department. Dr. Abdalati's research focuses on the use of satellites and aircraft to understand how Earth's glaciers, sheets, and sea ice are changing the implications of those changes for the Earth system. And our final witness is Dr. Jayesh Gupta, founder and CEO of Silurian AI, a Washington-based company pioneering large-scale AI foundation models for the physical world to address some of the most critical challenges facing our planet. Silurian's flagship technology, the Generative Forecasting Transformer, GFT, is a frontier weather foundation model delivering state-of-the-art weather forecast hours earlier than other operational systems. Easy for me to say. Mr. Cavett, I now recognize you for 5 minutes of testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Chairman Franklin, Ranking Member Amo, Chairman Babin, Ranking Member Lofgren, members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify before you today. It is an honor to be here as a representative of the commercial weather industry to discuss emerging technologies that enhance weather forecasting. My name is Thomas Cavett, and I serve as a senior leader at Tomorrow.io, where I lead government strategy and business development in North America. I bring over a decade of experience working at the intersection of technology, infrastructure resilience, and national security. I'm also a member of the Department of Commerce's Environmental Technologies Trade Advisory Committee and a veteran, having served as a Green Beret in U.S. Army Special Forces. Tomorrow.io's mission is to equip governments, industries, and individuals with advanced weather intelligence to make faster, more informed decisions in the face of weather-driven challenges. We build solutions across the entire value chain, from proprietary space-based observations and AI-driven models to real-time decision support platforms. While we operate a first-of-its-kind commercial weather satellite constellation, our work extends far beyond space, with AI and machine learning embedded throughout our systems. The Weather Act of 2017 was pivotal in galvanizing our industry and fueling Tomorrow.io's growth. Tomorrow.io has raised over $300 million since 2016 and now serves customers ranging from NOAA, NASA, and the US Air Force to global Fortune 500 companies. Weather is not only an economic and public health concern, but also a critical national security issue. Tomorrow.io is already delivering significant impact across the US economy. We're helping agricultural suppliers reroute shipments, supporting specialty pharmaceutical companies delivering life-saving medicine, helping utility providers prepare for and mitigate weather impacts to the power grid. And we're saving airlines tens of thousands a month per hub by avoiding unnecessary weather impacts. America's weather challenges are growing more urgent, and meeting them requires speed, agility, and innovation that traditional systems alone can't deliver. Fortunately, commercial innovation has lowered the barriers to entry in both weather and space. Just as commercial launch has revolutionized access to orbit, we are now transforming weather forecasting using private capital and technology with government as a strategic partner to deliver faster, more affordable, and more capable solutions. Tomorrow IO's deployment of a constellation of precipitation radars and microwave sounders represents the first ever commercial multi-payload weather satellite constellation. Tomorrow IO is helping to lead a paradigm shift where commercial providers are filling the atmosphere with new sensors, from low Earth orbit and the upper atmosphere down to ground and sea level, capturing vital data and closing long-standing observational gaps. By working across the full technology stack, from data collection to forecast delivery, we can adapt quickly to user needs, operational gaps, and we build greater resilience into our national forecasting infrastructure. The goal is not to replace government capabilities, but to complement and strengthen them. Public-private models have already proven their value across the space domain, delivering high performance at lower cost. Weather is next. With dual-use applicability, the ability to take on high-risk innovation, and access substantial private capital, commercial weather providers offer the speed, agility, and scalability the nation needs to stay ahead. Many authorizations from the 2017 Weather Act have expired or need updating as our industry has matured. We strongly support the bipartisan committee's efforts to reauthorize the Weather Act this year. Key provisions include directing NOAA to evaluate commercial options before building its own systems, moving beyond pilot programs to focus on operational use, filling observational gaps, protecting private sector data, and improving forecasts for threats like hurricanes and atmospheric rivers. By leveraging private sector innovation, the U.S. can escape the decades-long cycle of costly, complex weather missions. Despite outspending Europe, U.S. weather forecasting consistently lags behind global leaders, weakening our strategic edge. Empowering agencies like NOAA to partner with the private sector will help restore U.S. leadership in weather forecasting. In conclusion, I want to thank the committee for your time and commend your leadership in addressing this vital issue. We stand ready to partner with you to protect lives and property and ensure U.S. leadership in weather intelligence. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cavett. I now recognize Dr. Nielsen-Gammon for 5 minutes to present testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Franklin, Ranking Member Amo, Chairman Babin, and Ranking Member Lofgren. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today on the Weather Act reauthorization. I appreciate all you do to help Americans avoid dangerous weather and help us make well-informed decisions regarding the risks that weather and climate throw at us. While I'm a professor at Texas A&M University and Texas State Climatologist, I'm testifying for myself and not speaking for my employer or the state of Texas. Today, I'd like to discuss a few examples from my personal experience of how NOAA's weather-related activities, particularly the ones contemplated in the Weather Reauthorization Act, are critical to the well-being of Texas and to the rest of the United States. As you all know, Texas recently suffered a devastating weather tragedy. Floods are not just Texas's problem, as we've seen in New Mexico, Kentucky, and North Carolina this year, in Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee, and Florida last year. Since the 2015 flood in the Texas Hill Country, the state of Texas has focused on filling gaps in the existing real-time observing network. Many other states also operate mesoNets to monitor on-the-ground weather conditions for public safety, agriculture, and many other applications. This data is then available for the National Weather Service to detect emerging severe weather threats, provide ground truth for radar estimates of extreme rainfall, and improve warnings of hazardous weather. I'm grateful for the National mesoNet program, which is included in the Weather Reauthorization Act, for helping to offset some of the costs of operating these mesoNets. The value of such data is going to continue to grow as artificial intelligence is trained on local high-density observations. The Weather Authorization Act will also help move NOAA forward in replacing the existing radar network with state-of-the-art technology. Increasing the number of radars in a modernized network, both publicly and through private partnerships, would help fill key gaps in areas such as eastern Pennsylvania and southern Texas. Floods in Texas tend to end droughts, unfortunately. That's not the way to do it, but Like many state climate offices, we are heavily involved in local drought monitoring as well. Every week, our office collects information from our NWS offices and local stakeholders on drought within the state and makes recommendations to the author of the U.S. Drought Monitor. The U.S. Drought Monitor is the basis for hundreds of millions of dollars annually in drought relief from the USDA to ranchers. One day, I received a call from a rancher reporting severe drought conditions at his ranch and wondered why the U.S. Drought Monitor wasn't indicating the presence of drought there. I looked into it and found that the only nearby rain gauge was way at the other end of his county. His drought just wasn't visible with standard tools. So with funding from the USDA and from NOAA, we developed a way to take the precipitation estimated by the National Weather Service for the sake of flood forecasting and convert it into measurements of drought severity and its variations within individual counties. NOAA now supports the delivery of that drought tool through our Southern Regional Climate Center. In addition to research funding, the Weather Act authorizes funding for the National Integrated Drought Information System, or NIDIS. We work directly with NIDIS through its Southern Plains Drought Early Warning System to improve the ability of folks in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas to understand, anticipate, and deal with drought. We're also trying to figure out how to compare the droughts of the past to present-day droughts, which can feature more rainfall but hotter temperatures. We have a project that's been recommended for funding under a joint program from NIDIS and NOAA's Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, or OAR. We're hoping to dive into that next year, pending funding of NIDIS and OAR, such as would be authorized by the Weather Reauthorization Act. We're subject to all sorts of severe weather in Texas, not just extreme rainfall, and the National Weather Service is critical in how we deal with that. They work closely with our Division of Emergency Management, embedding personnel in our state-level emergency operations center, and coordinating with broadcasters, emergency managers, and other state and county officials. The emphasis in the Weather Reauthorization Act on effective communication of weather hazards is critical for ensuring that people understand the weather situation when their lives are at risk. An effective system requires understanding how and why people are making decisions about what to do when severe weather threatens, and that can vary from community to community and even household to household. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. I now recognize Dr. Abdalati for 5 minutes to present testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Franklin, Ranking Member Amo, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this very important matter. I greatly appreciate the work of this committee and its bipartisan efforts to examine the capabilities and opportunities to improve weather forecasting to serve the interests of the nation. The U.S.'s historical success in improving forecast accuracy and extending lead times has been a direct result of robust investments in observations as well as research on the physical processes that drive weather and how they evolve on both the short and long terms. The suite of observational capabilities from ground to space anchors models and informs forecasts in powerful ways. While the focus of this hearing is on new approaches, it's important to recognize the value of traditional observing systems for informing models and supporting forecasts. These capabilities are continually being improved upon. The upgrade of the NexRad radar system to phased array radar will enable faster, more accurate, and targeted observations during severe weather. Newly emerging drone technologies, airborne, surface, and subsurface, can provide a powerful complement to aircraft and satellite observations. These drones are not a substitute, but they have demonstrated their value and great potential to be one element of a suite of impactful observing capabilities. Satellite observations in particular have been a powerful and continually evolving element of a robust observing strategy. NOAA's fleet of weather satellites, both geostationary and polar orbiting, make foundational observations to provide the context, scale, and perspective of weather system structure and behavior that are necessary to truly understand their development, dynamic characteristics, and their interaction with other elements of the Earth system. In so doing, they are fundamental to accurate prediction and hazard detection, and they inform response and management. These space-based observing capabilities have their roots in research technology and mission investments at NASA, which produces state-of-the-art observatories and provides fundamental insights into the physical processes that shape weather. The highest priority new space-based weather observations identified by the National Academy of Sciences Decadal Survey underpin NASA's Atmospheric Observing System mission, AOS, one key focus of NASA's recent Earth science investments. AOS and related missions and research are essential for advancing our understanding of atmospheric processes and improving predictive capabilities. The fate of AOS and other critical missions and research remains unclear, however, as the administration's budget proposal for 2026 seeks to eliminate or drastically reduce them. Translating these observations into meaningful outcomes from the NOAA satellites, the NASA satellites, the ground-based instruments, and others requires research into how the processes function, evolve, and manifest themselves in ways that impact humans. This importance is recognized in the Weather Act reauthorization, which supports research that complements and enables operational capabilities. Much of this is carried out through NOAA's Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research and other line offices, all of which maintain strong partnerships with university-based cooperative institutes that conduct research and train the talent in support of NOAA's mission and broader societal objectives. I am hopeful that in deliberating the 2026 budget, Congress recognizes the value of this research and continues to invest in NOAA's and other federal agencies' new and sustained observational capabilities, enabling technologies, modeling, and overall research capacity. Finally, I'd like to specifically state that realizing the benefits of these investments requires investing in people. Whether it's for making observations, examining the physics, developing models, interpreting results, making forecasts, or communicating risks, some of the best investments we can make are in people, today and for the future. I thank you for your time and attention, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Abdalati. I now recognize Dr. Gupta for 5 minutes of testimony.
Chairman Franklin, Ranking Member Amo, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to testify on the profound impact artificial intelligence is having on the domain of weather forecasting. My name is Jayesh Gupta, CEO of Silurian AI, a company dedicated to transforming our understanding of weather and making its impact on the physical world more predictable using large-scale AI. Our work was recently published in the journal Nature. For decades, weather forecasting has meant massive government-run supercomputers. I'm here to tell you that this paradigm has shifted. The same AI revolution that transformed how we understand language and brought us ChatGPT is now transforming weather modeling. For the first time, AI models like Aurora and GFT can learn the physics of the entire Earth system as a unified whole. Not only do we get higher accuracies on a variety of environmental forecasting tasks, we also cut compute costs by 99%. Our forecast that takes a supercomputer hours to run now takes minutes on a single GPU. Over the last year, my small startup has been able to develop and operationalize global weather forecasts that outperform the equivalent European and NOAA forecasts, US regional rapid refresh forecasts that outperform the equivalent NOAA forecasts, hurricane track forecasts, which are highly accurate and comparable to getting the official National Hurricane Center forecast a day ahead. More importantly, working with our early clients, we have been able to demonstrate how the same foundation model allows weather modeling together with its infrastructure impact to actually help decision-making on the ground. For example, forecasting high-impact events like icing on transmission lines to help avoid grid outages. These capabilities emerge from a single foundation model that has learned the whole Earth system. This leap has been possible thanks to one priceless national asset, decades of high-quality, publicly available weather data from NASA and NOAA. This data is the bedrock of the AI revolution in weather. We must understand that any reduction in this public data stream is the direct threat to American innovation and our leadership in this field. While the technology has raced ahead, the frameworks for public-private collaboration unfortunately have not. The process for integrating cutting-edge models from a small business like mine is simply too slow and opaque. As a nation, we risk falling behind. We are not leveraging the unique strengths of American businesses. This leads to the core of my testimony. To reclaim and extend US leadership, NOAA's role has to evolve. From being the primary producer of all forecasts to being the primary enabler and validator of a competitive, innovative national ecosystem. We propose a strategy built on 3 pillars. First, empower innovation. The traditional government contracting process is too slow for AI. We asked you to direct NOAA to create agile ways for engaging small tech companies. We need clear on-ramps to get proven breakthrough technologies from the private sector into the hands of American people fast. Second, establish a national weather model test bed. To create a truly competitive ecosystem, we must measure innovation objectively. We urge you to fund NOAA to establish a public standardized framework to evaluate new models. This creates a level playing field where the best technology wins, whether it comes from the government labs or a small startup. It positions NOAA as the world's gold standard validator, a role of immense strategic importance. And third, protect and enhance our national data infrastructure. This is the non-negotiable foundation. AI models are built on data. We urge the committee to ensure our nation's environmental data archives are protected, modernized, and remain openly accessible to fuel American innovation. Members of the committee, we are at a pivotal moment. The technology to deliver significantly better forecasts exists today. The question is no longer about technology. It's about whether America will lead this transformation. Thank you. I welcome your questions.
I thank the witnesses for their testimony, and I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. As I mentioned previously, my home state of Florida is no stranger to hurricanes. We all know that. My hometown, as I said, has the Hurricane Hunters based at Lakeland Airport. Miami is the home of the National Hurricane Center. They even named the University of Miami after their hurricane. So we're very versed in hurricanes. Unfortunately, we have way too much practice, and we have had a lot of practice in preparation and resilience, and we've gotten better at that over the years. And a lot of that's been driven by the forecast and the better and better forecasts we're getting. As we've experienced the last few years, we're seeing a lot of these hurricanes intensify rapidly, sometimes from a Cat 1 or a Cat 2 to a 4 or 5 even overnight. So timing is critical, and best predictions of where they're going to make landfall are important when you have basically a thumb sticking out in the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, that's got 24 million people. Where that storm makes landfall is critical on how we determine how we evacuate millions of people away from the coast. So on that, originally planned for 2026, but moved up to July of 2025, DOD announced that it's going to discontinue the ingestion, processing, and distribution of all Defense Meteorological Satellite Program, DMSP data to NOAA, citing security concerns. And there are some valid security concerns there, and national security is important, but these sensors have been critical to determining storm centers, especially at night. To all of our witnesses, and if we could, since there's 4 of you and I got 5 minutes, if you could try to limit it to maybe 30 seconds, what can be done to best supplement this DMSP data moving forward as the program is phased out? And then also, in your opinion, is DOD living up to its commitments after the cancellation of NPOS to gather and provide early morning orbit coverage to complement NOAA's Joint Polar Satellite System? Mr. Cavett, if you could lead off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, let me first start by saying that microwave imagers and microwave sounders, microwave imager is the type of sensor that's on DMSP, are critically important for hurricane forecasting, but also just the backbone of our numerical weather prediction, kind of medium range forecasting capabilities. So the loss of that system is significant. If you couple that with the shutdown of the POS systems from NOAA in June of this year, we've lost about 60% of our capacity as a nation for microwave imagers and sounders, which is quite a high number. Tomorrow.io actually has 7 microwave sounders on orbit today, providing that operational data. And while the imagers and the sounders, there's some nuances to the sort of differences in them. They both really provide that early detection of intensification that you mentioned, being able to see the eye formation, the curved band before that, and at night as well, as you said, because the geostationary sensors can only see the cloud tops and sort of infer what's happening within the storm. In terms of whether DoD is meeting its mission to provide that early morning orbit, WSFM, which is the Weather System Follow-on Microwave, which they launched in 2024, is in that orbit, but it's not the exact copy of SSMIS on DMSP. It's a slightly different frequency range. NOAA is also launching their Quick Sounder program potentially in 2026, and together those would fill that early morning gap for the most part. But I'll also say that this concept of kind of early morning, early afternoon architecture is a bit outdated. If you compare what our constellation is capable of today, because we fly in both polar and mid-latitude orbits, we actually achieve 2-hour revisit globally throughout the day. So this idea of kind of spacing your sensing throughout the day is irrelevant when you can meet a sub-hourly revisit, which is what we'll achieve by the end of this year. So I think it's important in terms of filling these gaps to your question that NOAA be able to access these data sets, particularly as we're entering this severe hurricane season this year. Thank you.
Dr. Nielsen-Gammon.
I'll just comment that having a smooth transition of observing system is critical for being able to optimize the technology and how we use it. I'll let the satellite experts talk in more detail.
All right. Dr. Abdalati.
I'll reiterate that comment. There are some capabilities. We use these in the Arctic for monitoring sea ice evolution as well. Not as familiar with the meteorological applications, but what is critical with satellite capabilities is overlap. And my understanding is the end of life of DMSP is about a year away, so it isn't clear to me why well, if there are security concerns, I defer to those experts, but it comes at a great cost because that overlap and cross-calibration time is needed for that, and we're losing that time for reasons I don't understand.
Great, thank you. Dr. Gupta.
I would reiterate, like, long horizon archives are fairly important, and as we change observational systems, you need to have them overlapping for ideally at least a year to complete the full season.
Great. All right, thank you. I now recognize the ranking member from Rhode Island for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rhode Island, like many coastal states, faces compound risks from storm surge, sea level rise, coastal flooding, and the like. Improving our ability to predict these events requires way more integrated environmental data, including soil permeability, coastal topography, and regional sea level rise. And we need this data to fully understand and prepare for how extreme weather will affect coastal communities and infrastructure across the country. And so, as we alluded to earlier, and I've heard in some of your remarks, President Trump's FY26 budget proposes eliminating NOAA's Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, along with its climate, weather, and ocean laboratories, and 16 cooperative institutions that provide much of the data and analysis needed for this kind of integrated risk assessment. And fortunately, as I referenced, the initial signs are that congressional appropriators are going to move more in the direction that is necessary to address the real urgent public safety needs here. Dr. Abdalati, I want you to elaborate on some of your comments earlier about the consequences of the elimination of NOAA's research capabilities, and how would losing observational data and scientific expertise affect our ability to anticipate and respond to extreme weather events? Because it is complex, but I think for those who may be tuning into this topic for the first time because of recent events, I'd really like to hear what the research component means to our capacities.
Sure. The research component turns those observations into information, and those observations are the product of exceptional technical development and capability, but at the end of the day, data is not information until it's been examined, interpreted, understood. The research also enables stuff we take for granted now, the kinds of predictions we take for granted now as being routine, to develop. They are a product of past investments in research. So when we talk about looking to the future and the forecasting capabilities and the capabilities to ensure resilience, we are talking about the outcomes of research, the work of the people. So the data are critical. We're talking about observations here. The capacity to analyze them through artificial intelligence techniques certainly enhance our ability to interpret that information. But at the end of the day, the fundamental physics and the understanding of the physics, the chemistry, and the implications requires research.
And what you say there illuminates a point that I think you'll hear from many of us, that there is an essential federal role, an essential role that is played by the research that takes place, that's funded by this Congress, and that needs to be supported in a robust way moving forward.
Absolutely, and I do take to heart the comments of the other witnesses about new and innovative ways of looking at and doing things. That's absolutely a critical part of a broad portfolio, but foundational to it is the development of knowledge, is the interpretation of what we see that can be augmented by better observations, by new analytical techniques. But at the end of the day, it takes basic physics, an understanding of the physics. It takes people trained in those capabilities to turn that information into meaningful outcomes.
Thank you. As we've previously discussed, President Trump and Commerce Secretary Lutnick have paused or canceled NOAA contracts for a range of critical products and services, some with little or no explanation. At the same time, the ongoing staffing shortages caused by hiring freezes and mass terminations have hollowed out NOAA's operational capacity. Dr. Nielsen-Gammon, how are funding delays or staffing reductions at NOAA affecting the work of the cooperative institutes or regional climate centers, including your ability to deliver climate data, forecasting tools, and public services?
Yeah, our tools get used quite widely by the public, by various private sectors, by broadcast meteorologists, and so forth. We had a 4-day pause in our contract at the end of April because of waiting for approval all the way through the Department of Commerce and renewal of that. We're up for the supplemental funding that has been authorized in previous budgets by Congress, but we don't know whether that's going to be approved. And the whole program is up for recompete this year. And basically, we're waiting to see whether Congress and the administration are going to support the services we provide to the country going forward.
Well, thank you for that. And, when we talk about the impact of minutes mattering, a 4-day pause seems pretty problematic. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranking Member Amo. I now recognize my colleague from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici, for 5 minutes questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, and thank you to the witnesses. I also want to acknowledge, I know Chairman Babin was here, his personal connection to the tragedy in Texas. So this is the time when Americans are facing increasingly deadly storms and floods and heat waves. So accurate and timely weather forecasts are critical. Instead of strengthening NOAA, which is, of course, the backbone of our weather enterprise, the Trump administration is slashing funds, gutting staff, and continuing its ongoing pursuit to privatize essential functions. Now, I'm going to follow up on Ranking Member Amo's comments. This is the weather forecasting bill. People say 2017, but I've been working on this since 2013, and it took a while to get there. And I do support public-private partnerships, but I also want to emphasize that NOAA and the National Weather Service are critical for operational integrity and public safety and access. We cannot sideline the essential scientific research that powers our forecasting system. And much of the innovation we see in weather forecasting, which is a good thing, derives from decades of federally funded basic research and open NOAA data sets. So does the private sector have a responsibility to build on rather than replace NOAA's public mission? If you could just answer it, and I hope you can keep this a yes or no, just because I have other questions. Mr. Cavett?
Absolutely.
Dr. Nielsen-Gammon?
Yes.
Dr. Abdalati?
Yes.
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So Mr. Cavett, how do you and other industry leaders plan to deliver forecasting products that enhance NOAA's services? What safeguards should Congress consider so this remains a successful partnership?
Well, Congresswoman, we already benefit greatly, as you said, from both the research and the operational tools that NOAA and other agencies have developed in this industry. But there's also a bit of a paradigm shift that's happening where the private sector is also contributing that level of scientific input and innovation and building tools to help complement the data that NOAA has and providing data to NOAA to fill gaps that it has as well. In terms of safeguards, I think having independent third-party validations, making sure that the data is sound, making sure that it's reliable, because it protects lives and property is critical.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Abdalati, since the beginning of this year and Donald Trump's inauguration, at least 1,500 NOAA employees, including meteorologists, data scientists, technical staff, were terminated or forced to resign. Several cooperative institutes, which are critical, as you know, have not received federal funding. And in fact, the administration is calling for the complete elimination of CIs. So NOAA's cooperative institutes produce more than half of the agency's lab research, including validation of AI forecasting model. So what would the administration's proposal of eliminating CIs mean for the future of accurate weather forecasting innovation? And who would be harmed if that research is no longer publicly available?
In short, it would be devastating because it would remove the capability, some of which could be taken over or is complemented by industry. But sometimes we delve in to understand for the purpose of understanding that ultimately delivers the benefits of that understanding without an eye toward sort of closing a business case, which is necessary for private entities. As far as who would be harmed by that, the American people. And also some of these cuts, we train the next generation. So the American people would be harmed for generations to come. We've already got people who've lost grants, who've had them pulled back, that can't carry out the work that they successfully competed for, that ultimately would benefit.
And I assure you that's a serious concern of many members of this committee. And again, Dr. Abdalati, you talked about people. And I know, Dr. Nielsen-Gammon, you mentioned this as well, but if I want to emphasize, sat in this room and where you sit today, we had a whole discussion about the importance of social science and the social scientists, their contribution, especially in improving weather warning systems for clarity, to reduce confusion. So if you could just comment on the importance of having that input as well as the hard science, to have that social science and what it means in terms of, I mean, I represent a district on the Pacific Northwest, and I know Dr. Gupta, you know this being from Washington State. We have a Cascadia subduction zone. We need good tsunami warnings, and they need to be accurate and timely conveyed in a way that's urgent. So if you could just comment on the importance of that full range of science.
It's critical, and I included that in my written testimony. But ultimately, the value of the work is fully realized when we understand how people absorb information, use it, react to it, and act on it. So social science informs that, and so it's critical. And I will say, that tends to be done in the universities at the cooperative institutes. The federal agencies, NOAA in particular, does not really have a budget to support social science except what's done through the cooperative institutes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm also on the education committee and fighting against the attacks on higher education. So thank you. As I yield back, I just want to emphasize we need to invest in NOAA. Lives and livelihoods are at stake. There is too much at risk. Thank you again, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Bonamici. I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Dr. Babin, for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I think it's important to note that the Weather Forecasting Office that covers Kerr County was not fully staffed in advance of the July 4th flood there. But they also had a hydrologist on staff. Excuse me, let me back up. I would like to say that the Weather Forecasting Office that covers Kerr County was not only fully staffed in advance of the July 4th flood, but they also had a hydrologist on staff. Staffing was not an issue, and forecasts were timely and accurate. It is also important to note that the President's budget request, or PBR, recommends an increase in the National Weather Service. Also, both House and Senate appropriators have subsequently considered funding bills that sufficiently fund NOAA above the levels of the PBR. And now my question for you, Dr. Gammon. The flash floods in Texas Hill Country earlier this month caused the death of nearly 130 people, and there are still folks missing. The level of devastation to human life has exposed a deficiency in the current system, warning people that danger is imminent, despite the facts that forecasts were accurate, notifications and warnings went out. What do you think can be done to prevent a tragedy like this from happening again?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I don't think it's possible to totally prevent tragedies like this, but we can certainly learn from them and improve all aspects of warning and distribution, including more precise forecasts and warnings with additional lead time. That's possible with modern technology. Improving the communication systems. We've heard about the lack of technology available in places without cell phone coverage in the area, and making sure that people, the general public, and people responsible for other people, like camp operators and so forth, understand the nature of the risks and how to specifically respond to them, especially in the middle of the night when you're not necessarily thinking clearly. You already have plans in place to deal with them.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. In an interview, Rob Kelly, who is the Kerr County, Texas county judge, and its most senior elected official, said the county did not have a warning system because such systems are expensive and local residents are resistant to new spending. Taxpayers will not pay for it, Judge Kelly said. Asked if people might reconsider in light of the catastrophe, he said, "I don't know." Now we know that forecasts and warnings went out well in advance of the floods and that notification systems and cell phones were alerted. Now in this rural area, cell phone service is sparse. I live in a rural area myself, and I can vouch for that. And the early morning hours of the event, as you just intimated, made receiving the alerts even more difficult. But I think everyone acknowledges that absolutely more should be done. This is a question of prioritization. We recently held a hearing on the Biden administration's Justice 40 initiative that required 40% of all federal expenditures be devoted to transform hundreds of federal programs by channeling resources toward communities that have faced, quote, longstanding environmental injustices and inequities. This resulted in significant taxpayer resources going to DEI and environmental justice initiatives rather than in protecting the lives and property of American citizens. The GAO recently warned Congress that America's fiscal health is at risk based on excessive spending, increased debt interest, and ballooning mandatory spending. Facing such fiscal challenges and in light of recent tragedies, I would submit that the government should shore up forecasting and notification systems rather than DEI and environmental justice initiatives. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Babin. I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Ms. Lofgren, for her questions.
Well, thank you, Chairman Franklin. And as I noted in my opening statement, I am an original co-sponsor of the Bipartisan Weather Act reauthorization of 2025, and it has certainly been my hope that we can act quickly on it. Now, the private sector is playing an increasingly significant role in weather forecasting. While NOAA is the bedrock of weather data collection, analysis, and provision, the private sector is developing new offerings that combine NOAA's infrastructure, products and services, weather data, incorporate advanced visualization techniques, and take advantage of machine learning. But challenges remain, including questions around data quality, continuity, open access, and cost effectiveness in the private sector. There's a growing need to ensure these partnerships support NOAA's mission without compromising NOAA's role as a trusted provider of free, reliable, and authoritative information. NOAA, as the federal partner, is the key component of the partnership, and it has the responsibility to gather the observations into forecasts, outlooks, and projections of future conditions to make it readily accessible and to use all this information for the national benefit. I will say that the testimony did cause me some concern. The question about the future of NOAA's weather infrastructure that Mr. Cavett described in his written testimony. and his assertion that the Weather Act of 2025 would help create that future was confusing. In the testimony, it says NOAA can maintain assets in space, but could primarily shift to a commercially owned, commercially operated model where the agency manages data flows and forecast outputs for the public good. This radical new approach would free up additional resources. And that's actually, I helped write the bill, and that's not what the bill does. I think we need to clarify this so that we're all on the same page. Mr. Cavett did not cite a specific provision in the Weather Act to support that testimony, but let me just read the section that it runs contrary to the assertion. First, section 301, section 110, satellite architecture planning. In general, the undersecretary shall maintain a fleet of National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration space-based observation platforms that provide critical operations-focused data and information to support the mission of the administration to monitor the global environment in order to protect lives and property from extreme weather and other natural phenomena. Section 3802 talks about the program establishment, the undersecretary in coordination with the appropriate offices shall maintain a commercial data program, and that's the pilot project that supports the private sector efforts today. It goes further to say, however, that the undersecretary may, not shall, may acquire satellite, ground-based, airborne, or marine-based in situ remote sensing and the like. So this is not a radical departure from the current policy. We do value the fact that the private sector is playing an important role. We do not deny that, but it is not going to supplant NOAA anytime in the near future. The bottom line of this bill is to ensure that NOAA has the capability to access, buy, and use commercially available data to augment its core observational capability, which is fundamentally a core mission-critical government function. We're reminded just last week of how critical the National Weather Service's forecasts are. Relying on the private sector for that primary role is not an option. Now, I look forward to sitting down with my friend Congressman Lucas to make sure he and I are on the same page. I think we are, but I just thought it was important to use my time here instead of asking questions to make sure that the intent of the bill is not misunderstood. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. I now recognize my colleague from North Carolina, Ms. Ross, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Franklin and Ranking Member Ammo, for holding this very important and timely hearing. And thank you to our witnesses for joining us today. As we witnessed devastating floods in Texas, New Mexico, and my home state of North Carolina, displacing families, damaging infrastructure, and costing so many lives, we're reminded that weather forecasting isn't just science, it is survival. Emerging technologies are transforming how we collect and interpret weather data, and that is a good thing. From AI-powered models and high-resolution satellites to drone-based atmospheric sensing, we can now equip our outstanding forecasters at the National Weather Service with improved tools to predict weather patterns with increasing precision, and that's happening in the private sector as well. When these technologies are combined with data from traditional sources like weather balloons and radar systems, we gain a clearer, more comprehensive view of weather patterns than ever before. However, as we've heard, this progress is under threat. The Trump administration has proposed sweeping cuts to our nation's weather agencies, including the closure of all federally funded meteorology labs. Eliminating them means communities like those in Texas, New Mexico, and North Carolina, and of course across the country, will face the next disaster with less warning and fewer tools to respond. Consider the breakthrough by students at Stanford University who developed a cutting-edge AI forecasting model that rivals and in some cases surpasses existing systems. That model depends heavily on high-quality, long-term government weather data, data that has now been discontinued due to budget cuts. Emerging technologies hold immense promise, but they can't function without funding. And if we do not have sustained investment in core data and scientific research, even the most innovative solutions will not produce the warnings that we need. Weather forecasting is simply not a luxury. It's a critical service that protects communities, informs farmers, supports transportation, and saves lives. We must fight in a bipartisan way to preserve and strengthen our weather agencies and not dismantle them. Artificial intelligence is reshaping the future of weather modeling, offering new opportunities to generate faster, more localized, and potentially more accurate forecasts. And thank you, Dr. Gupta, for sharing with us about this. These advances are being driven by improvements in computing, access to large-scale environmental data sets, innovation, and foundational models. As the technology evolves, it raises important questions about how NOAA can harness its potential to improve public forecasting and resilience. Dr. Gupta and then Mr. Cavett. Because AI-based models rely on historical weather data to determine their output, areas with limited previously recorded data, and we heard a little bit about this with the Texas farms, right? Particularly in rural and low-income communities, may be more challenging to detect. What are the significant challenges with data limitation? How can we best unlock innovation in weather predicting systems, particularly given their potential impacts on emergency preparedness and public safety decisions in these areas where you cannot get the information? So Dr. Gupta first.
Thank you for the question. I would say this is not completely true at the moment with large-scale machine learning models that can actually combine data from satellites, global scale data with highly localized data and generalize to locations which may not have the same sensors available. So these are the technologies that actually allow you to combine data from many different kinds of sensors that are not always easy to use with existing physical models. Like if you talk to people on the NOAA side, people will tell you, like even with respect to existing observations, they're probably not able to use vast majority of them in their current operational models. So from that perspective, AI is actually very interesting and transformative in terms of using even existing data much better.
Thank you. Mr. Cavett?
Thank you. First, I'll say, AI as an innovation, it's opening many doors in this industry. It allows us to ingest more data. It reduces the computational costs of these models, but it also requires training data. And for us to, excuse me, provide better data in these communities, we need higher resolution data in those areas in order to train the models to be effective. I would posit that one of the core ways we do that is from space. We need higher revisit observations from space, similar to what the commercial industry is building, in order to enable those models to really deliver the value that they can.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Representative Ross. I now recognize my colleague from Illinois, member of the full committee, Dr. Foster, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to our witnesses. First off, it goes without saying that our hearts go out to all the recent victims of the recent floods. It's back in 2021, a tornado ripped through Naperville, Illinois, the town I live in, and by a matter of just a couple of minutes, lives were saved because of the prompt warning. That was only possible because of the close coordination between the local government, units of government, and the National Weather Service that keeps an eye on things. And I was grateful actually last year to have an opportunity to achieve a childhood dream where I climbed up the tower into the radar dome of a National Weather Service facility at Lewis University Airfield. and see what's actually inside that, which is, for those of you who've never been inside those little spherical domes on the top of a tower, there's a parabolic antenna that's spinning around, and down below they have a klystron in a building, and talk to the guy that maintained the klystron. These are, these are great facilities, and they're most of the time not used, and then they save lives from time to time. So it's just, it's incredible. Now, I'm also, I guess, one of Congress's few actual AI programmers, so I've just been fascinated by the progress that's made. And so, Dr. Gupta, there's sort of two different approaches that have been very effective in this. The first one is just say, give me all of the data, all the sensors we have out there, and predict tomorrow's sensors. And you can do that with almost understanding no physics, no atmospheric chemistry or anything. Or you can go to a hybrid approach where you use what's known about the physics of a little blob of air, the way they used to solve them on supercomputers. And it seems like if you look at things like protein folding, the best approach is to do a hybrid of both, where you have AI supervising it, or are you an AI purist, where you just say, forget about the physics, yeah.
I would say this is the thing with respect to the scaling laws in artificial intelligence. Even in the protein folding domain, if you look at the new research that has come up, the share of physics goes down and share of data and the modeling goes up. So in general, this is true, I would say, even in the weather modeling space. If you don't, there is definitely a role and opportunity to use these models themselves to understand the physics better. There's a lot of interpretability research that needs to be done to understand what these models are able to learn from data that we don't fully understand from a physics perspective. That's happening with respect to language and other domains as well.
Now, and one of the things that this committee has oversight over is the split in effort between state-of-the-art AI machines, which are going to smaller and smaller data widths. As small as single-bit data paths, but certainly less than 8-bit data paths, which is contrary to what we've traditionally been doing, 32, probably 64-bit floating point.
Yeah.
And the question is, should our investment be shifting down to these narrower data path architectures for weather applications?
Yeah.
Or will there be always a use for the high precision part of it?
I think the high precision stuff comes from the physics approaches, because you can't solve those equations unless if you lose precision, because you kind of lead to catastrophic errors. AI machine learning approaches, the current ones actually, the higher precision is good for them as well, but it's just much cheaper to
It's a
scale
waste.
it
Yeah,
up.
it's a waste. And so the trend
Yeah.
in pure AI for commercial applications is toward the low width data
Yes.
paths. So the question is, are we going to get two branches of supercomputing, one of which, the high precision one, may have to remain federally supported because it won't survive commercially? Do you have any, when you said that the trend is more toward use AI and not use mathematics and physics, is that something that we should anticipate should be reflected in government and supercomputer investment?
I would say this is true. This is not you do not even have to accept my point of view, but even the previous chairman of ECMWF, the European agencies, Peter Bauer, does agree with the fact that operationally the AI methods are likely going to continue to improve and are the future of how operationally these systems are going to work. But physics still has a role. We need to understand how these things behave, what other observations do we need, how do we actually improve our understanding. So these things are likely going to remain in parallel for a long time. But operationally, what we actually need is provided by the AI models already.
Yeah, well, it's a brave new world. Everything you're so proud of understanding the physics turns out to be irrelevant. You just throw it into machine learning and get a better answer. So now I'm out of time here, but really appreciate this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. And I'm not sure what else may be on your bucket list, but if flying into an eye wall is on there, I'd love to have you down to our district to ride out with a hurricane hunter sometime.
Okay, I'll ask my wife about that.
Yeah. So I spent an entire career in the Navy trying to avoid storms when I was flying, but they go charging right into it, which I admire.
Well, yeah, I'll pilot a drone into an eye.
Oh, there we go. All right. So I know we have, with the rescheduling this one, we have a conflict of several hearings and things going on the floor at the same time. I know there are members from both sides who are trying to get here drastically, quickly. Okay. Okay, I'd like to recognize my colleague from Virginia now for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I have I've caught some of the testimony so far. I've been in another hearing as well, but I think this is a really important issue because being prepared, being ready, and being able to anticipate weather events is increasingly important. And I actually got into politics because of this. I was in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit the city, and I didn't care about politics before that. And then I started caring about it because of the response to Katrina. So that's sort of why I'm here today. That's put me on this path. And so I take a special interest in this particular topic. And I guess one of my concerns is that I had a town hall the other night, and a gentleman, he'd worked at NOAA for many years. He'd worked on weather satellites for 20 years. He's one of their top expert engineers, and due to budget cuts at NOAA, his contract is ending on September 30th. And this is really important capabilities that he was working on. And his wife was a civil servant for 34 years, and she was working on the GeoXO program. But then she decided to take early retirement. But her work was so critical that they begged her to come back, and she agreed to come back the next day. But you know, what I'm concerned about is the expertise that we're losing when it comes to weather forecasting and weather events in the federal government. And I'd love to hear from you know, I guess anyone, but you know, what are these cuts gonna do to impact our ability long term as a country when it comes to these weather events? If anyone would like to answer that.
I'll make a couple comments. The impact is going to be long-term because we're losing talent. The talent that remains is nervous. The good ones have other opportunities. The best ones have other opportunities. And so there's going to be a brain drain. But there's also going to be a lack of a brain infusion from the other end because the educational opportunities diminish in the face of this. So I think the unfortunate thing is, from my perspective, I fully support the idea of taking advantage of capabilities in artificial intelligence, the commercial sector. And I do think that the role of NOAA in the area of weather prediction should and is evolving. But the goal, it seemed in this case, was simply to reduce the numbers as opposed to develop a more efficient capability. And so when the goal is to reduce the numbers, I think the pursuit was clumsy and has great consequences. And it's unfortunate because if carefully and thoughtfully done, I think the best of both, you know, the government capabilities, well, not both, the government capabilities, the university capabilities, industry capabilities could be brought forward to be optimized, but the result is a significant gap in capability that will last a long time.
I think that's right. And there was 1,500 NOAA employees who were fired or resigned. 560 have left the National Weather Service. And our National Weather Service office in Sterling, Virginia, it's the vacancy rate has doubled now. And there's even more cuts planned, 27% cut of NOAA funding and 17% cut of workforce. And a lot of this is the critical technology and modeling and data collection that we need to do really good weather forecasting. And for the American people who might be watching, you know, first of all, thank you for watching a science and technology hearing on a Wednesday. But second of all, just know that this impacts you right now. And we just saw it in Texas. And you know, yes, we got money out to Texas for storm infrastructure planning and under the American Rescue Plan, but that $10 million was diverted in a way that was not very helpful. And then these cuts meant that people who were calling in couldn't get a hold of anyone when they were affected by the flood. And then long term, I'm worried about our ability to even anticipate these types of disasters. And so we are making every single American vulnerable by cutting these critical people at NOAA and at the National Weather Service, and it's going to hurt every single American. And I think the phrase brain drain is the right thing to think about. This is going to be brain drain for our expertise in the federal government when it comes to weather forecasting. So I appreciate the hearing, and thank you to our witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Subramaniam. I now recognize my colleague from Florida, Mr. Herodopoulos, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a very thoughtful meeting, and I'm glad we're having this opportunity to have a positive discussion, and I appreciate you bringing the folks before us. And but let's also take a look at this with this tragedy in Texas and understand where we are on the factual side of this. And as I think everyone in this room knows, and probably people watching, as just mentioned on C-SPAN, is that the National Weather Service did provide timely and accurate forecast. Their challenge, I think we all recognize, it happened between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's a tragedy what happened. And this is where we move forward to solve problems, not to play politics with it. These are lives we're talking about, not political gambits. And there was no lack of staff, as we've all looked at it, whether it be the Austin, San Antonio offices or the San Angelo office. And there has been authorized a situation where to hire 126 staffers before this happened. And so, again, I get frustrated as a new member of Congress that everything has to be political. And I think that what we need to focus on is solving problems. But in the case here, it was done by the book. They had the right personnel there. They put the warnings out, and it happened, unfortunately, at a very untimely hour. And of course, we also have to mention it was 36 feet high. I mean, this is a huge thing that happened, I think, in less than 45 minutes. And so this is why what we should take from this is what better preparation can we have, especially as we think about nighttime events like this as we move forward. And so I'm glad to see our chairman, and being from Florida, we recognize not only floods, but of course we face hurricane threats, but that's nothing we can prepare for. As we know because of the excellent work by the National Weather Service and NOAA and others, we can better anticipate the storm, and thus we can be prepared. Of course, this was a middle of the night event like never before. And to see the absolute destruction in less than 45 minutes is a true tragedy. And that's why we were all on the floor yesterday to recognize the heroic acts of so many people who literally not only put their lives on the line, but lost their life trying to save others. And that's the thing that we should be focusing on. And as I mentioned before, we've already talked about restaffing some of these folks before this happened to make sure that the numbers are right. And this is what I think solutions are about, as opposed to playing politics. And so a lot of these narratives have proven to be false, but everybody's always in a rush to play politics. As we saw immediately after this tragedy, people are pointing fingers, and that's not how we solve problems in Washington, D.C. I'm glad to see that hopefully we have meetings like this and we look at our budget and do it right. And the other thing I think I want to make clear to everyone before us is that a lot of these cuts are proposed cuts. And the way you stop proposed cuts is you do what you do today. You advocate for programs you believe in. I've been in a situation where I happen to be the chairman of the subcommittee for space. And there was a lot of discussion about space adjustments. The sky is falling, there's X cut or that cut. And what has happened in the big, beautiful bill, we added $10 billion to the space program to help make sure that not only Artemis 3, but 4 and 5 are now funded. And we have made ourselves space dominant because we put those dollars in place, recognizing the situation we're in. And now, between now and roughly October 1, when we actually get our budget moving forward, we're going to be looking at these very programs and make sure we put the right people and the new technologies that are emerging. We have some of those new technologies actually in the state of Florida to make up for some of these gaps that we have in weather activities. And I think we can also use that across the country. And so, Mr. Chairman, as I serve on this committee, of course, our chairman is here for the full committee. I think this is an opportunity for us to explore how to best utilize the most modern technology and move forward in a positive way. And clearly, this administration, as they've inherited a very unique situation from the prior one, can look at where we're at and go out to solve problems with the latest technology and make best use of those 126 people that they talked about before this incident took place in the state of Texas. So hopefully it never happens again. And we'll, of course, with the good work of the leadership, especially from our members from Texas, I think they'll come up with some creative solutions so that when those literally the middle of the night situations take place, we might have a more accurate and effective system to help those people who are truly in need. And my focus right now is really applauding those people who are going out there every single day to try to bring some closure to some families. And I love what you have done, Mr. Chairman, in focusing on solutions as opposed to pointing fingers. And so with that, I won't ask any questions because I know we're running out of time, but I'm glad we're focusing on solutions instead of politics. That's what this institution should be all about. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Herodopoulos. That certainly was the purpose of the hearing. And I now yield 5 minutes to my colleague from Maryland, Ms. McLean Delaney.
Thank you to the chair and ranking member, and thanks to our witnesses for being here. I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague that we need to work in a bipartisan way to have solutions on weather prediction and meteorologists. I do not believe in finger pointing, but I do believe in using data, and I do believe that we do need to solve problems with our latest technology and best resources. But we also need to make sure that we, before we start to defund and break things, that we are staffed up and are able to really understand the impact of some of the freezes and different things that we are dealing with. In particular, I represent the 6th District of Maryland, and communities across the country, including my native state of Idaho, but my own constituents in Allegheny and Garrett counties experienced devastating floods 2 months ago. Effective weather forecasting and emergency response teams saved hundreds of students and staff from Westernport Elementary in May. Sadly, in Texas, that did not happen, heartbreakingly so, but they actually credit the emergency weather service for saving those children. They were about to let them go at dismissal time, and they kept them in the building. The waters rose from the 1st floor to the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor, but they were rescued by boat, and there was not one injury. And it was because of the prediction services that happened. As we've heard today, partnership lies at the heart of our nation's ability to predict and respond. Our partnership, not partnership, relies at the heart of the ability to respond to severe weather emergencies, and collaboration between academia and governments and private industry is very important for forecasting data. I was privileged to work in the Biden administration at NTIA, but I actually visited NOAA's headquarters and also their Boulder, Colorado facility. And I was never more impressed by many of the meteorologists there and what they were able to do. So I'm going to ask just a couple of things. I know that we have highlighted the importance of NOAA's Cooperative Institute, CIs, and how they're the backbone of the National Weather Service. Just ask our panelists, these institutes represent 50% of NOAA's research workforce. And as we heard, the FY26 budget would zero that out. How, I know you've talked a little bit about it, but how would the weather service ability to provide open free data be impacted if they're closed? And is there anything we can do to mitigate this against this landscape?
So the open and free data access is really a bedrock of getting the most out of the investments thus far. Cooperative institutes, I'm a director of one, the largest one, play a key role in that, but ultimately it comes down to the government policies that either dictate or enable the production of and release of that data and making it publicly available. What I will say, though, is it is employees at the Cooperative Institutes in partnership with our federal colleagues that do the work that make it so, developing higher level products that people can access. And I can't stress enough, it is a partnership with federal employees that ultimately draws the best from both the federal side and the university side to put forward this data and this information for the benefit of certainly the American people, people in our state, people all over the world. Ultimately, the data have value that are most fully realized when it's most accessible, and we play a key role in that.
I think that's great. You know what? I think that was a perfect answer. I am going to ask one more before I run out of time. A number of our institutions, like the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Studies, are CI consortium members, training the next generation of climate scientists. How will our ability to predict and respond to emergency be impacted if these CIs close? And how do we see our workforce for the next 10 years?
Sure. The CIs are really feed into the federal workforce, develop the talent that the commercial entities ultimately draw from. We're experiencing that directly right now in Boulder, where a very successful enterprise that was undertaken by the federal side and the university side is being taken over by a commercial entity. So that development of capability is huge for precipitating commercial activities, but the biggest contribution is in the talent pipeline. The federal employees usually start out at cooperative institutes. It's kind of an audition period, but looking far into the future, it's the talent we train in this domain that ultimately supports the broader enterprise.
Thank you.
Congresswoman, may I respond to the previous question
Sure.
briefly? So I just want to say that totally agree from a scientific research standpoint and an operational standpoint. Providing that data on a free and open basis, making sure that the American public receives the forecast as a public good is critical. I will say that on the commercial side, things have evolved a little bit in the sense that, while that operational forecast, free and open, we totally agree. The raw data coming out of our satellites, for example, has become an important commodity of our industry.
Yep.
And we're able to raise significant private capital, take on significant risk, and really invest in these systems because we have a dual use. We can sell to governments, we can sell to the commercial sector. And so really empowering NOAA to be able to negotiate and create those licensing agreements to protect that upstream data is critical to make sure that the commercial industry can continue to innovate like this.
Thank you. Excellent point.
Thank you.
I yield back.
And thank you, Ms. McLean Delaney. And with that, I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members today for their questions. The record will remain open for 10 days for additional comments and written questions from members. With that, this hearing is adjourned.